I never thought my coworker would follow me outside of work just to film me on a day I was using my cane to try and prove I wasn't really disabled. But that's exactly what happened, and it's been a nightmare ever since. Let me start from the beginning. I have chronic pain. I know a lot of people say that, but I mean I have a daily baseline of pain that most people never experience. The way I explain it is, normal people walk around at a pain level of maybe 1 or 2 out of 10. For me, every single day is at least a 6. You know that feeling when you step on a Lego, that sharp, blinding burst of agony that's over in a second? That's an 8. Now imagine that same kind of ache, but dull and constant, like you pulled a muscle and every movement hurts. That's my normal. Some days I get lucky and drop to a 4. Rarely a miracle day puts me below that. On bad days I'm at a 7 or higher, and that's when I use my canes. Yes, canes, plural. I own a couple different ones because sometimes one isn't enough. I have a handicap placard hanging from my rearview mirror, and my license plate has the marker. I went through all the proper channels at work, filled out the paperwork, got my accommodations formally approved. It's all on file. My full-time job knows, and my part-time job knows too. I'm physically and legally disabled. It's not something I hide, but it's also not something I lead with. I just try to live my life. So about this part-time job, I love it honestly. It's close to my house, and my boss Amy is amazing. She's understanding, fair, and treats everyone like a person. The role is assistant coordinator, and I share that position with a coworker named Casey. We're both assistant coordinators under Amy. Casey has been there longer, and she's made it no secret that she wants a promotion to a full-time coordinator role. I get it, she's ambitious, and that's fine. But me, I already have a full-time job. I do this part-time gig for extra savings and because I genuinely enjoy the work. Keeping busy helps with my anxiety too. So when Casey heard I wasn't interested in the promotion, I think something shifted in her brain. She saw me as competition anyway, even though I didn't want what she wanted. Go figure. A few weeks ago on a Sunday, I had what I call a bad pain day. I was at a solid 7. I needed to grab some groceries, so I drove to the store with my cane, parked in a handicapped spot like I'm allowed to, and hobbled inside. Nothing unusual for me. After I finished shopping and came back to my car, I noticed a vehicle parked a few spaces away that looked familiar. It was Casey's car. I thought that was weird because Casey lives in a different part of town, but maybe she was shopping too. I didn't think much of it until I saw her sitting in the driver's seat holding her phone up, pointed right at me. At first, I thought she was just texting or something, but the angle was wrong. She was definitely filming me. I froze for a second, and then she lowered the phone, started her car, and drove off without even acknowledging me. I stood there for a moment, confused, wondering if I had imagined it. But I hadn't. I knew what I saw. The next day at work, I pulled Amy aside and told her what happened. I didn't want to cause drama, but I also didn't want to just ignore it. Amy listened, nodded, and said she would talk to Casey. She seemed concerned. I felt a little better, like maybe it would be handled quietly. But that afternoon, Amy called me into her office and told me Casey had denied everything. She said Casey claimed she was just on the phone with her mom, that she wasn't filming anyone, and that I must have misinterpreted the situation. Amy said she believed me, but without proof there wasn't much she could do. She told me to document everything and keep her posted. I thought about letting it go. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. But then a few days later, I overheard Casey talking to another coworker in the break room. She said something like, "I don't know why she acts like she's so disabled. I've seen her walking just fine without that cane." My blood ran cold. She was questioning my disability. To my face, she's always polite. Behind my back, she's trying to discredit me. And the filming, that was her trying to get evidence that I'm faking. I'm not a confrontational person. I hate conflict. But I knew I couldn't just let this slide. So I went back to Amy and told her about the overheard comment. Amy sighed and said she would have a conversation about workplace respect with the whole team. No names mentioned, a general reminder. I appreciated the effort, but I could tell Amy's hands were tied without concrete proof. Casey had been there longer and she was well-liked. I was the new person with the invisible condition. Then things escalated. I started noticing Casey's car outside random places, not just the grocery store, but near my apartment complex, near my full-time job's parking lot. I live with my boyfriend, and he even spotted her car once when he was coming home from work. I told him what had been going on, and he was furious. He wanted me to go to the police, but what would I say? A coworker is following me and filming me? It sounds paranoid. It sounds like I'm looking for drama, but I knew it was real. I started documenting everything. I wrote down dates, times, locations. I saved any texts or emails. I took photos of her car when I saw it parked suspiciously close to my usual spots. I felt like I was losing my mind, but I also felt like I had to protect myself. The breaking point came about a week later. I was leaving my full-time job, a completely different employer, and as I walked to my car, I saw Casey again. This time, she wasn't even trying to hide. She was parked right across the street, phone up, filming me. I had my cane that day because my pain was at an 8. I was moving slowly, deliberately, trying to minimize the jarring of each step. And there she was, capturing it all. I didn't scream. I didn't approach her car. I just stood still, looked directly at her, and raised my own phone to film her back. She lowered her camera, sped off, and that was the last time I saw her in person that week. I went straight to Amy the next morning. I showed her my log of sightings, the photos, the dates. I told her about the most recent incident. Amy's face went pale. She said she would take it to HR immediately. I felt a wave of relief but also dread because I knew this was just the beginning. Casey had been building a narrative about me for weeks, telling people I was faking, that I was a liability, that I was taking a spot she deserved. And now I had proof of stalking, but it was my word against hers, and her word had the weight of seniority. HR called me in for a meeting a couple days later. They told me they had reviewed the situation and couldn't confirm any wrongdoing on Casey's part. They said the photos I provided didn't clearly show her filming, just her in her car. They suggested counseling for both of us and reminded me that the company had a no retaliation policy. Translation: don't make a fuss or you'll be the problem. I was devastated. I felt like the system was designed to protect the bully. I started having anxiety attacks before every shift. My boyfriend told me to quit, but I loved my part-time job. I loved Amy and the team. I didn't want to let Casey win, so I stayed and I became hypervigilant. I avoided being alone with her. I kept my phone ready to record. I felt like a prisoner in my own workplace. And then last Friday, I got an email from HR that changed everything. They said Casey had filed a formal complaint against me for harassment. She claimed I had been the one following her, taking photos of her and spreading rumors. She even provided a video, the video she had taken of me at the grocery store, edited to make it look like I was walking without pain, then cutting to a clip of me using my cane at work, implying I was faking. She had turned her own stalking into evidence against me. I broke down crying in the office. Amy found me and hugged me, whispering that she believed me, but it didn't matter, the damage was done. I was now officially under investigation for harassment. And Casey, she was the victim. That was when everything changed. I realized I couldn't just hope this would blow over. I needed to fight back, and I needed to do it publicly. I started thinking about legal options, talking to a lawyer, and reaching out to disability advocacy groups. But the roller coaster was only just starting. I'm still in the middle of this mess. I don't know how it's going to end. But I can tell you one thing, I never thought a coworker would follow me outside of work just to film me. And I never thought the system would let her get away with it. But here I am, fighting for my reputation, my job, and my sanity. I didn't scream, I didn't run. I just stood there in the parking lot of my full-time job, phone raised, recording her recording me. Casey lowered her phone first, threw her car into drive, and peeled out of the lot like she was the one being hunted. I watched her taillights disappear and felt something break inside me. I had proof now. I had my own video of her stalking me. But when I brought that to HR, they said it wasn't clear enough to prove intent. They suggested mediation, between me and the woman who had been tailing me for weeks, filming my limp, trying to prove I was faking a disability that I live with every second of every day. I hired a lawyer, a disability rights attorney who specialized in workplace harassment. She told me to file a police report. I did. The officer who took my statement looked at my cane, then at my face and said, "So you're saying she followed you from the grocery store to your other job?" I said yes. He asked if she had threatened me physically. I said no. He shrugged and said it sounded like a workplace dispute, not a crime. He didn't file anything. I could see it in his eyes. He thought I was being dramatic. Meanwhile, Casey kept coming to work. She smiled at me in the hallway. She brought donuts for the team. I heard her laughing with the other assistants about some show. I sat at my desk, pain throbbing in my lower back, and I wanted to disappear. My boyfriend begged me to quit. My mom called every night asking if I was okay. I told her I was fine. I was. Then 2 weeks after the police report, I got a letter from HR. Casey had been promoted. They said her position was being elevated to fill a new role and I would now be reporting directly to her. I stared at the letter for a long time, then I typed out my resignation. I didn't give a 2-week notice. I walked into Amy's office, handed her the letter, and told her I couldn't do it anymore. Amy cried. She said she was sorry. She said she wished she could have done more. But we both knew the system was built to protect people like Casey, not people like me. That was 3 months ago. I'm still looking for a new job. My lawyer is still working on a potential lawsuit. I still have my cane, my pain, and my diagnosis. But I also have a surveillance camera on my front porch now, and I don't park in handicapped spots anymore. I can't stomach the thought of someone filming me again. I thought I had moved past that chapter, but then I saw a Reddit post that hit me in a completely different way. It wasn't about a coworker, it was about a husband. And it made me realize that betrayal can come from anyone, even the person you trust to hold your hand. I was at my son's birthday party when I found out my husband had been cheating on me with his ex-wife. Let me back up. My name is Mike. I'm 27. My husband Peter is 37. We've been together 6 years, married for 3. We adopted a 7-year-old boy named Jack about a year ago. He's the light of my life. I love him like he came from my own body. Peter is bisexual and I've always known that. I've never had a problem with it. He has an ex-wife named Allison, also 37. They divorced a year before we met and they don't have kids together. But Peter's family, they're homophobic. They never accepted our marriage. His mom especially always made comments about how Peter should get back together with Allison. She gave you a real marriage, she'd say. You can still have a normal life. I gritted my teeth at every holiday dinner. Jack's birthday was in September. We decided to celebrate at Peter's family's town about 2 hours away so that Jack could see his cousins. I wanted it to be perfect. We rented a hall near his parents' house. I decorated everything with superheroes, Jack's obsession. I baked the cake myself, vanilla with blue frosting. I was so proud. The party started at noon, kids running around, parents chatting, the usual chaos. I was cutting the cake when my mother-in-law came up to me and said, "Oh, I invited Allison. She wanted to wish Jack a happy birthday." My heart dropped. I looked around for Peter. I didn't see him. I wanted to scream, but I also didn't want to ruin Jack's day, so I just nodded and kept cutting. An hour later, I noticed Peter and Allison were both missing. I asked a cousin if she had seen them. She shrugged. I walked into the house through the living room up the stairs. I checked the guest bedroom, empty. Then I went to Peter's old childhood bedroom. The door was cracked open. I pushed it slowly. They were both half undressed. Allison's blouse was unbuttoned. Peter's belt was undone. They froze when they saw me. I stood there for maybe 3 seconds. Then I turned around and walked back downstairs. I didn't say a word. I went straight to Jack, hugged him, and helped him open his presents. I smiled for the photos. I made sure every kid had a piece of cake. I was operating on autopilot. When Peter and Allison came back down, Peter pulled me aside. His face was red. He said, "You shouldn't have cut the cake without me. It was disrespectful." I looked him in the eye and said, "I'm sorry, I just thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants." His face went white. He didn't deny it. He just stood there. So I took Jack, packed our bags, and left for the hotel. I tucked Jack into bed, kissed his forehead, and sat in the bathroom crying silently so he wouldn't hear. The next morning, Peter showed up at the hotel room. He knocked and knocked. I didn't open the door. He texted me. "It was a mistake. She kissed me first. I love you." I didn't respond. I drove home with Jack and spent the next week in a fog. I called a divorce lawyer. I started gathering evidence, bank statements, texts, anything. I found out that Peter had been sending Allison money for months. Hundreds of dollars. He said it was for child support, but they never had a child. Turns out Allison had gotten pregnant during one of their hookups and Peter had been keeping it a secret. The kid was 14 years old, 14, and Allison had been passing the kid off as her husband's. Peter had known all along. I lost it. I confronted him. He admitted everything, the affair, the money, the secret son. He said he was sorry. He said he loved me. He said he would cut off his family, but I couldn't trust him. I filed for divorce. Peter's family started harassing me, calling me a homewrecker, saying I was tearing apart their family. They even showed up at my work. I had to get a restraining order. It's been 6 months. The divorce is almost finalized. Jack lives with me full-time. Peter gets supervised visitation. I'm in therapy. I'm slowly rebuilding my life, but I'll never forget that moment in his childhood bedroom, and I'll never forgive his mother for setting it all up. Some people will choose their blood over what's right. I learned that lesson twice. But the worst betrayal I ever experienced wasn't from a coworker or a spouse. It was from my own father, the man who walked out when I was 13 and never looked back until it was convenient for him. My dad had an affair when I was 13. He left my mom for a woman named Jane. At first, he tried to be present. My sister and I went to his house every other weekend. He took us to the movies, bought us ice cream, acted like he cared. But then Jane got pregnant. They had a son. Suddenly, I wasn't a priority. He missed my piano recitals. He missed my sister's gymnastics competitions. He was always busy with his new son. I was just a reminder of his old life. When I was 16, Jane got a job offer in another state 10 hours away. My sister and I begged him not to leave. I cried. I screamed. He said, "I have to prioritize my family." I wasn't his family. That's when I knew. I went no contact after that. My sister stayed in touch, but I cut him off completely. I didn't invite him to my high school graduation. I didn't invite him to my college graduation. I avoided family events where he might show up. I missed my sister's wedding because he was there. I missed my nephew's first birthday. I built a wall and I locked it. Years passed. I turned 33. I had a good job, a girlfriend, a life. Then my dad and his family moved back to our hometown. He started reaching out again. Emails, texts, letters. He sent his son, my half-brother, to message me on social media. "Dad misses you. He's changed. Give him a chance." I ignored it. I blocked him. Then my dad showed up at my apartment. I didn't answer the door. He left a note. "I made mistakes. I want to make things right. Please call me." I didn't. A few weeks later, my sister called me crying. She said that my dad had been diagnosed with a serious illness. He wanted to see me before it was too late. I told her I didn't care. She said he was sorry. I hung up. Then I found out the truth. Jane had been cheating on my dad for years. She had had 2 affairs, one with her best friend's husband, which everyone in the family knew about but swept under the rug. My dad had stayed with her, but it had destroyed him. Meanwhile, I had been the one who turned my back on him. I had always thought he chose her over us. But now I realized he stayed with her because he didn't think he deserved better. He had ruined his first family and he was too ashamed to come back. I didn't forgive him. But I did go see him in the hospital. He looked old, worn out. He cried when he saw me. He said he was sorry. I said I heard him. I didn't say I forgave him. I just sat there for an hour, then I left. He's still alive. We're not close, but I don't hate him anymore. I just feel sad. Some wounds don't heal. You just learn to carry them. I thought I was overreacting at first. I mean, people do dumb things at work all the time, right? But this went way beyond dumb. This went into full-blown obsession. Let me explain. I have a chronic pain condition. I know everyone says that like it's a catch-all, but let me put it in terms that make sense. Imagine your normal day-to-day pain is at a 2 or 3, like a mild headache or stiff neck after a bad sleep. For me, it's a 6 every single day. Picture the feeling of pulling a muscle and then having to move that muscle constantly. That's my baseline. Some days it spikes to a 7 or 8, and on those days I use a cane. I have a handicap placard for my car. I've filed all the disability paperwork at my full-time job and my part-time job. I'm legally disabled, but I'm also active. I push through. I work 2 jobs. My full-time is my main career, but I also do a part-time role as an assistant coordinator. I took the part-time job to pad my savings and keep myself busy. Being busy keeps my anxiety in check. I actually like the work. My boss, Amy, is fantastic. She's supportive, understanding, and she never makes me feel like a burden. My coworker in the same position, Casey, is a different story. Casey and I get along okay, but she's been gunning for a promotion for years. I've been open about not wanting it. A promotion would mean full-time, and I already have a full-time job. I just want to do my hours and go home, but Casey saw me as a threat. I didn't realize that until later. This all started on a Sunday. I woke up at a 7 on the pain scale. That's a cane day. I grabbed my favorite wooden cane with the rubber tip, drove to work, parked in the handicap spot, and hobbled inside. I did my job. I smiled at customers. I ran the reports. I helped Amy with scheduling. At the end of my shift, I drove home and iced my back. Normal day. 2 days later, HR called me into a meeting. Amy was there, looking uncomfortable. HR said they had received a complaint that I was faking my disability. That I used a cane at work but was caught on video outside of work walking without it. They said the video was from a Sunday afternoon, clearly showing me getting out of my car and walking into a store without any aid. I froze. I knew exactly which Sunday they meant. That was the day I had a rare good day, a 4 on the scale. I had gone to the grocery store to pick up dinner. I left my cane in the car because I didn't need it. I walked into the store, grabbed a rotisserie chicken, and walked out. That was it. But someone had filmed me from across the parking lot. They had zoomed in. They had followed me. I asked HR who submitted the video. They said it was anonymous, but I knew it was Casey. We worked the same shifts. She had seen me with my cane on Sunday. She must have followed me after work, or maybe she just happened to be there and decided to document me. Either way, she took video of me without my knowledge or consent. I told HR the truth. I showed them my medical records, my disability paperwork, my placard. I explained that chronic pain fluctuates. They said they understood, but they had to look into it because the complaint was formal. I went back to my desk feeling sick. I could feel Casey staring at me. That week was hell. Every time I walked past Casey, she had this smirk. She started making comments loud enough for me to hear. Some people just want attention. Must be nice to have a handicap sticker for your bad days. I didn't engage. I went to Amy and told her everything. Amy said she would support me, but her hands were tied until HR finished their investigation. I also went to the police. I filed a report for stalking and invasion of privacy. The officer looked at me, a black woman with a cane, and he sighed. He said, "Ma'am, this is a workplace issue. We don't usually get involved in he said, she said." I told him I had video evidence. He said he'd take the report, but I shouldn't expect much. I left the station feeling worse than when I went in. The next week, HR concluded that there was no wrongdoing on my part. They said the video wasn't enough to prove I was faking, and since I had proper documentation, the complaint was dismissed. But they didn't discipline Casey. They said they couldn't prove she was the one who submitted the complaint. I asked if I could see the video. They said no because it was part of a closed investigation. That's when I started documenting everything. I kept a log of Casey's comments. I saved emails. I asked my doctor to write a letter explicitly describing my condition and how it fluctuates. I also started leaving my cane in the car more often on good days, but only when I knew Casey wasn't around. Felt like I was hiding my own disability just to avoid being watched. The worst part, Casey got promoted. 3 weeks after the investigation closed, Amy announced that Casey would be taking over a new coordinator role. It wasn't the full-time position she wanted, but it was a step up. I congratulated her. She smiled and said, "Thanks, I guess some people just have to work harder for what they want." I held my tongue. A month later, I got a call from my part-time job's corporate office. They said they had received an anonymous tip about possible fraudulent disability claims. They asked for updated documentation. I sent them the same folder I already had. They cleared me, but the damage was done. My boss started looking at me differently. I could tell. I reached out to a lawyer. She said I had a case for workplace harassment and invasion of privacy, but it would be an uphill battle. "Do you have proof it was Casey?" she asked. I didn't. Not solid proof, just gut feeling. Then 2 weeks ago, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of my car parked outside my apartment. The text said, "I see you don't need the handicap spot today." Smiling face with smiling eyes, I felt my stomach drop. Someone was still following me. I called the police again. They said they couldn't trace the number without a subpoena. I changed my schedule. I started parking in the back of the lot away from the handicap spots. I stopped going out after work. I felt like a prisoner in my own life, and the worst part, I still have to work with Casey. Every day I walk into that office and she smiles at me like we're friends. She asks about my weekend, she brings me coffee. And I have to pretend I don't know that she's the one who took that video, who followed me, who tried to destroy my credibility. I thought about quitting, but then I would be letting her win. So I stay, I keep my head down, I document everything. I talk to my therapist twice a week, and I hope that someday she slips up. Because I'll be waiting. That's the thing about chronic pain. You learn to endure. You learn to push through even when your body screams at you to stop. And you learn that some people will never understand. They'll see your good day and assume your bad days are fake. They'll watch you from the shadows and wait for you to slip. But I'm not slipping. I'm still standing, cane or no cane. I never thought I'd be the guy whose husband cheated on him at his own son's birthday party. But here I am, typing this out because I still can't believe it happened. I'm a 27-year-old guy married for 3 years to my husband Peter, who's 37. We've been together for 6 total. When we met, he was divorced from his ex-wife Allison, who he'd been married to for about 8 years. They had no kids together, thank God. We adopted our son Jack when he was 4, and I love that kid like he's my own blood. Jack is 7 now, he calls me dad, and I'm the one who reads him bedtime stories and helps with his homework. Peter works long hours, so I'm the primary parent most of the time. I don't mind. Jack is my world. Peter is bisexual. I've always known, and I've never had a problem with it. I do have a problem with his family, though. They're homophobic as hell. His mom, my mother-in-law, is the worst. She's always making comments about how Peter chose the wrong path and how he should have stayed with Allison. She even tried to set them up after we got married. Peter always told me he ignored it, that he loved me, and that his family was just toxic. I believed him. 2 weeks ago, it was Jack's 7th birthday. We decided to have a party at Peter's hometown because his mom offered to host, and Jack has a few cousins there he loves. I was hesitant. I knew his mom would be passive-aggressive and Jack would pick up on it. But Peter said it would be fine and Jack was excited, so we drove down to that town on a Friday evening. The party was on Saturday afternoon. It was at his mom's house, a big suburban place with a backyard deck and a pool. Jack's cousins were there, a few aunts and uncles, some of Peter's old friends. Everything was fine at first. I was grilling hot dogs, Peter was setting up the bounce house, and Jack was tearing into presents. And then my mother-in-law arrived with Allison. I saw her walk through the sliding glass door and my heart just dropped. She was holding a wrapped gift, smiling like she was a guest of honor. Peter's mom was beaming. I looked at Peter. He looked surprised, but not angry. He just said I didn't know she was coming. I bit my tongue. It was Jack's birthday. I wasn't going to make a scene, so I played it cool. I took Jack over to the trampoline, helped him open his gifts, and acted like everything was normal. Allison stayed on the patio talking to Peter's mom and some other relatives. Peter was nearby, but he wasn't really interacting with her. I thought maybe it would be okay. Then came the cake. I handed Jack his slice, and I was about to cut the big sheet cake for the adults when I noticed Peter and Allison were gone. I asked my mother-in-law where they went. She shrugged and said, I think they went inside to get more drinks. I didn't like that. Something felt wrong. I told Jack to stay with his cousin and I walked into the house. It was quiet. The living room was empty. I went down the hall toward the bedrooms. I heard a noise from Peter's old room. The door was cracked open. I pushed it open. And I saw Peter and Allison half undressed on the bed. They were kissing. Her shirt was off. His belt was undone. They froze when they saw me. I just stood there for what felt like a minute. Then I turned around, walked back to the party, and started cutting the cake. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just did it. The party wound down. People left. Peter and Allison came out about 20 minutes later, looking rumpled. Peter took me aside and started berating me for cutting the cake without him. He said it was disrespectful to his mother's hosting. I looked him in the eye and said, I'm sorry, I just thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants. He went pale. He didn't say anything. I took Jack by the hand, told him we were going back to the hotel because he had a big day tomorrow, and I left. I didn't look back. The hotel, I put Jack to bed. Then I sat in the bathroom and cried into a towel so he wouldn't hear. I thought about leaving right then, but I didn't want to traumatize Jack, so I stayed. The next morning, Peter showed up at the hotel. He begged me to talk. He said it was a mistake, that Allison had initiated it, that he was drunk. I reminded him he'd only had 1 beer. He said he was stressed. I said I didn't care. He said he wanted to work things out. I told him I needed space. We drove back home separately. I packed a bag and took Jack to my sister's house. Jack asked why we were leaving. I said we were going on an adventure. He believed me because he's 7. A week later, I filed for divorce. Peter has been blowing up my phone. He sent flowers. He sent his mom to my sister's house to apologize. She didn't apologize. She told me I was being dramatic and that Allison is part of the family. I slammed the door. Now I'm staying at my sister's, figuring out custody. Peter wants joint custody. I don't trust him. He cheated on me with his ex-wife at our son's birthday party. What's he going to do next? I've already hired a lawyer. She says I have a good case because of the infidelity and the fact that Jack is adopted by both of us, but the court will consider his best interest. I just want to keep Jack safe. And the worst part, Peter still doesn't think he did anything that bad. He texted me last night, I love you, I fucked up, but you're throwing away 6 years over one mistake. One mistake at my son's birthday party with his ex-wife while I was cutting the cake. I'm not throwing away anything he did. I don't know if I'll ever forgive him. I don't know if I can even look at him without seeing that room. But I know one thing, I'm not going to let Jack grow up thinking that's okay. So I'm standing my ground, that's my story, it's still unfolding. But I'm done being the guy who gets walked all over. I'm done with toxic families and cheating spouses. I've got a kid to raise, and I'm going to do it right. It's funny how the universe has a way of circling back. I thought I had dealt with the worst of it. But then my dad moved back to my hometown 3 months ago, and everything I'd buried came rushing back. I'm 33 now. When I was 13, my dad had an affair with a woman named Jane. Left my mom, my younger sister, and me to move in with her. At first, he tried to stay involved. We visit every weekend, and I'll admit he was a good dad when he showed up, but I never liked Jane. She was cold to us, always making comments about how we took up too much of his time or how we needed to let him focus on his real family. I was 15 when Jane got pregnant with their son. That's when the visits started dropping off. My dad would miss my piano recitals. He missed my sister's gymnastics competitions. He'd call and say he was sorry, but his son had a fever or Jane needed help around the house. I understood at first. I told myself he was just busy, but then I turned 16. Jane got a job offer in another state 10 hours away. She wanted to move. My sister and I begged him not to go. I remember sitting in his car in the driveway crying, telling him we needed him. He looked at me with this blank expression and said, "I need to prioritize my family." I was his family, me and my sister, but he didn't see it that way. He moved, and that pretty much ended our relationship. I went no contact when I was 16. I stopped answering his calls. I deleted his texts without reading them. My sister stayed in touch, but I couldn't do it. Every time I talked to him, I felt like a ghost in his life. He'd ask about school, but he didn't know my friends. He didn't know what teachers I had. He didn't know I'd started working on weekends. He was a stranger. He didn't come to my high school graduation. He didn't come to my college graduation. I didn't invite him. I didn't want him there. He would show up at my sister's house sometimes, trying to catch me, but I'd leave. I'd walk out the back door and disappear. Over the years, he kept trying. He'd send birthday cards with money. He'd have his other kids and his new wife call me. I blocked them all. I avoided family events for years, missed my sister's wedding because he was there. Missed baby showers, holidays. I told my sister I loved her, but I couldn't be around him. Then 3 months ago, he moved back to our hometown. Jane got a job here, and their kids needed to be closer to their grandparents. Suddenly, my dad was everywhere. He started showing up at my workplace. He sent messages through my aunt, through my cousins. He even got my half-brother, the son he prioritized over me, to text me. That one hurt. The messages started piling up. "Your brother wants to meet you. We can be a real family now. I'm so sorry for what I did. Let me make it right." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Every word felt like a knife. Then last week, my sister called. She said Dad was at her house crying. He told her he'd made a huge mistake. He said Jane had cheated on him multiple times. One of the affairs was with her best friend's husband. It all came out and their marriage was falling apart. He wanted to reconcile with me because he realized he'd lost everything. I almost laughed. He didn't want to make things right with me because he loved me. He wanted to make things right because he had no one else. His golden family was crumbling and I was a backup plan. I told my sister I still wasn't interested. She got angry. She said I was being cruel, that Dad had changed, that I should give him a chance. I reminded her that he chose Jane and his new kids over us for 20 years. He missed every milestone. He prioritized his son's soccer games over my sister's recitals. He didn't care about us until he needed us. That was a week ago. Yesterday I came home and found a letter taped to my apartment door. It was from my dad. He'd written 3 pages about how sorry he was, how he'd been in therapy, how he wanted to be a grandfather to any future kids I might have. At the bottom, he'd written his phone number and a plea: "Just call me, let me hear your voice one time." I tore the letter in half and threw it in the dumpster. Part of me feels guilty. Part of me thinks, what if he really has changed? But then I remember being 16, watching him drive away, knowing I wasn't enough. I remember the recitals he missed, the graduations, the birthdays, the moments when I needed a dad and he was busy raising someone else's son. I'm not his second chance. I'm not his backup family. I'm a person he abandoned, and I've rebuilt my life without him. So no, I'm not calling, I'm not talking, I'm not reconciling. I'm done being the one who waits while he figures out what he wants. I've moved on. And if that makes me the bad guy, fine, I can live with that. The leftover guilt from my dad's letter faded fast when I remembered what my sister said the next day. She told me our father was crying on the phone, saying Jane had cheated on him twice and that her second affair had been with a married man in their own neighborhood. The whole thing came out when the husband's wife confronted Jane at a grocery store. My dad said he felt like a fool. He said he finally understood what he did to me. I didn't feel sorry for him. I felt rage. He wanted to be forgiven because his life blew up. But that doesn't undo the birthday parties he missed. That doesn't bring back the nights my mom cried herself to sleep. That doesn't fill the empty chair at my high school graduation. When he drove away with Jane and their new baby, he made a choice. And now he has to live with it. I told my sister I wasn't changing my mind. She said I was being heartless. I said he made himself heartless first. She hung up. I haven't talked to her in 4 days. That's where I am now, sitting alone in my apartment, trying to rebuild the walls he keeps knocking down. But this time I'm not letting him in. I've had enough of people who pretend they care after they've already destroyed everything. That wasn't the only story I've been carrying. There's another one that still haunts me, one that happened just a few months ago. It involved my part-time job, a coworker named Casey, and a video that almost cost me my reputation. I have chronic pain. It's not something you can see on a normal day. I don't look sick. I don't look disabled. But I live with a constant level of pain that most people would call a 6 or a 7 on a bad day. Imagine pulling a muscle in your back and having that ache stick around for years. That's my baseline. Some days I'm lucky and it drops to a 4. Other days I'm at an 8 and I can barely walk without a cane. Those are the days I use my handicap placard and park close to the door. Those are the days I lean on the counter at work and pretend I'm just tired. I've worked at a local nonprofit part-time for the last 3 years. I love it. My boss, Amy, is a godsend. She knows about my condition because I filed all the necessary paperwork when I got the job. Accommodations were never an issue. She let me take breaks when I needed them, sit down during long meetings, and leave early if the pain got bad. Then there was Casey. Casey and I were both assistant coordinators under Amy. We started around the same time, but Casey had been eyeing a promotion for years. She wanted to become the full-time coordinator. She was always talking about how she deserved it, how she had put in the time, how I was just a part-timer who didn't care about the job. I didn't care about the promotion. I already had a full-time job in it. I worked this job because I liked the mission and the extra money helped me save for a house. I wasn't a threat to her, but she saw me as one anyway. It started small. She would make comments about how I always looked tired. She would ask if I was okay when I used my cane, but her tone wasn't concern, it was suspicion. Once I heard her tell another coworker, "I don't think she's actually in pain. She just uses that cane for attention." I ignored it. I've dealt with ableism before. People don't believe in visible disabilities. It's exhausting to explain, so I stopped explaining. I just did my job and went home, but Casey took it further. It was a Sunday in January. I was having a high-pain day. I'd woken up with my back screaming and I knew I needed my cane. I also had to run errands. I went to the grocery store, used my handicap placard, parked close, and hobbled inside with my cane. I grabbed what I needed in about 20 minutes. By the time I got back to my car, the pain had eased slightly. I had taken my medication and it was kicking in. I was still sore, but I could walk without the cane for a few minutes. I put the cane in the passenger seat, drove home, and forgot about it. The next day at work, Casey pulled me aside. She had this smug look on her face. She said, "I saw you yesterday at the grocery store." I said, "Okay." She said, "You were walking fine, no cane, no limp, you were carrying your own bags." I stared at her. "I had my cane in the car, I used it inside the store, I just put it away before I got to the parking lot." She shook her head. "I have video. I recorded you from my car, you were walking perfectly normal." I felt my stomach drop. "You recorded me." "I needed proof," she said. "I knew you were faking." I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just said, "Show me the video." She pulled out her phone and played it. It was about 30 seconds of me walking across the parking lot to my car carrying a grocery bag. No cane. My stride was normal because the medication was working. But that's the thing about chronic pain, it's unpredictable. I wasn't faking, I was having a good moment in a bad day. I said, "You need to delete that." She said, "I already sent it to HR." I lost it then. I went straight to Amy and told her everything. Amy's face went pale. She said, "She did what outside of work?" I nodded. Amy called HR immediately. The next day, Casey was put on paid leave pending an investigation. But Casey wasn't done. She posted the video on social media, tagging our organization. She wrote a caption saying our company was fraudulently using a disability placard and that I was a liar stealing resources from real disabled people. The comments were brutal. People called me a faker, a scammer. Someone said I should be fired. I got messages from strangers telling me I was disgusting. I had to delete my social media accounts. I filed a police report for stalking and invasion of privacy. The officer looked at me and said, "She's just a coworker. This is a workplace issue, not a police issue." I said, "She followed me to a grocery store and recorded me. That's stalking." He shrugged. "We'll look into it." They didn't do anything. I'm black and I live in Texas. I knew what that meant. HR investigation took 3 weeks. Casey claimed she was just trying to protect the company. She said I was a liability because my disability was fake. She brought in other coworkers who said they'd seen me walk without a cane before. None of them knew about my condition because I didn't broadcast it. Amy defended me. She showed them my medical paperwork. She testified that I had never lied about my pain. She even found a text from Casey that said, "I'm going to catch her in the act." Watch, Casey was fired, but the damage was done. People still whispered about me. I still got looks. The worst part was the video never fully disappeared. Some people uploaded it. I still get messages from strangers. I still have to explain myself. I'm not going to let it break me, but I'm also not going to pretend it didn't happen. I have chronic pain, I have a disability, and I have a coworker who tried to destroy my life because she wanted a promotion. I've been going to therapy. My therapist says I have every right to be angry. She also says I need to forgive myself for not being perfect. I'm working on it. Casey applied for unemployment and was denied. I heard she moved to another state. I hope she gets help, but I also hope she never works in a position of power again. As for me, I'm still working at the nonprofit. Amy gave me a raise in a private office so I can use my cane without everyone staring. I'm learning to trust again, but I still flinch when I see a car in the parking lot that looks like hers. I still check over my shoulder when I walk to my front door. I still wonder if someone is recording me. That's the twist. You can win the battle, but the scars stay. You can fire the person, but the anxiety lingers. You can have the documentation, but the doubt never fully goes away. I'm not over it. I'm just learning to live with it, and that's okay. But that wasn't the only betrayal I faced. Not long after, I found myself in a situation that shattered my trust in a completely different way. It started with a birthday party, a 7-year-old boy, and a woman I never should have had to see. I'm 27, a guy married to a man I thought I knew. His name's Peter, he's 37, and we'd been together for 6 years, married for 3. We have a son, Jack, who we adopted right after we got married. He's 7 now, and I love him like he came from my own blood. Peter is bisexual, and I always knew that. I never had a problem with his ex-wife, Allison. They divorced a year before we met. She's 37, same as him. I never met her until that day. Peter's family is homophobic. They never accepted our marriage. His mom would always say things like, "You and Allison were so happy," or "Why can't you just make it work with a woman?" I ignored it. We lived 3 hours away, so we didn't see them often. But for Jack's 7th birthday, we drove down to his hometown. I wanted Jack to have a real family party, even if it meant dealing with the tension. We planned everything. I booked a bounce house, ordered a cake with dinosaurs on it, invited Jack's cousins from Peter's side. The party was at his parents' house, a big backyard with a fence and a grill. I was in charge of the games, the music, the cake cutting. I wanted it to be perfect. When we arrived, I noticed his mom acting weird. She kept glancing at her phone. She said, "Oh, I invited a few extra people. Hope you don't mind." I said, "Who?" She waved her hand. "Just some old friends." I didn't push it. I was too busy setting up. Jack was so excited. He ran around with his cousins, playing tag, climbing on the bounce house. I watched him and felt that warm, full feeling you get when your kid is happy. Then about an hour in, I saw a car pull up. A woman stepped out, blonde hair, sunglasses, a tight dress. I didn't recognize her. She walked right past me into the house. I asked Peter, "Who is that?" He wouldn't look at me. He said, "That's Allison." I froze. "You invited your ex-wife to our son's birthday." "I didn't," he said. "My mom did. I didn't know." I wanted to scream, but Jack was right there, laughing, blowing bubbles. I couldn't ruin that, so I swallowed it. I smiled. I went back to playing with Jack. An hour passed. The cake was ready. I looked around for Peter and Allison. They were gone, both of them. I asked his mom, "Where are they?" She shrugged. "Maybe they went inside to talk." I walked into the house. I checked the living room, the kitchen, the bathroom, empty. Then I heard a noise from his old bedroom, the one he grew up in. The door was cracked open. I pushed it. They were on the bed, half undressed, clothing scattered on the floor. Peter was on top of her. They didn't see me at first. I stood there for what felt like a minute, my brain refusing to process. Then I backed out. I closed the door quietly. I went back to the party. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I cut the cake. I handed out slices. I helped Jack open presents. I took pictures. I smiled. I was a robot. Inside, I was falling apart. The guests started leaving around 4. Peter and Allison came back downstairs, both looking flushed. Peter walked up to me angry and said, "You cut the cake without me. That was disrespectful." I looked him in the eye. I spoke low so no one else could hear. "I'm sorry. I just thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants." His face went white. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I grabbed Jack's hand. I said, "We're leaving." I took him to the hotel, put him to bed, and sat in the bathroom with my head in my hands. The next morning, Peter called. He cried. He said it was a mistake. He said Allison had come on to him, that he was weak, that he still loved me. I asked him, "Did you use protection?" Silence. He hadn't. I told him I needed space. I took Jack and drove home. For 2 weeks, I didn't answer his calls. I talked to a lawyer. I talked to my therapist. Jack kept asking, "Where's Daddy?" And I said, "He's working." I couldn't tell a 7-year-old that his father cheated on me with his mother. Then 2 weeks later, Allison showed up at my door. She looked terrible. She said, "I'm pregnant. It's Peter S." I didn't faint, but I felt the floor tilt. I said, "What?" She said, "I think it was the one time. That night, I'm sorry." She asked me not to tell Peter yet. She said she needed to figure things out. I told her she had to tell him that I wasn't keeping her secret. She started crying. She said she had been lonely, that she still loved him, that she thought maybe they could be a family again. I said, "We are a family. You are not part of it." She left. I called Peter. I told him, "Your ex-wife is pregnant. It's yours." He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "I'm so sorry." I said, "I want a divorce." I filed. He didn't fight it. The divorce went through in 3 months. I got full custody of Jack because Peter signed away his parental rights. He said he wanted to start fresh with Allison. I didn't let him see Jack. I didn't let him call. I blocked his whole family. That was 6 months ago. I'm still processing. Jack is in therapy. I'm in therapy. I live in a new apartment. I changed my number. I don't talk to anyone from Peter's side. I heard through a friend that Peter and Allison got married. She had the baby, a girl. I don't care. I hope he's miserable. But mostly I hope Jack never has to know the details. He asked about Peter sometimes, and I say he chose to live somewhere else. That's all he needs to know. I'm not forgiving anyone, not Peter, not Allison, not his mother who set it up. I'm just surviving. I have a kid to raise. I have myself to rebuild. That's what I'm doing, one day at a time.